young love, I give him that time. Control leg stand and punchy America. Banyi dwala banaban. Control leg stand and punchy America. Banyi dwala banaban. Walk on your leg, kankara watana watchin. Oga level leg, gear power, leg. Panda with ya, punchy America. Banyi dwala bano. Chingatonga pandon kujura by a check out. Paku panda gear what ya be dwala venting. Stand and punchy America, Banyi Dwala, Banaban, Punta Leg stand and punchy America, Banyi Dwala, Banaban, walk on your leg, Kankara, Watana watching, Oga level leg, Gear power, leg, Panda with ya, punchy America, Panya Dwala Bano, Chingatonga Pandon, Kujura by a check out, Paku Panda Gear, what ya be, Dwala venting.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are tuning in. Welcome to Lake State Media. It's happy Easter to all of you. That's the first thing I would like to tell all the Christians followers in this page. We will be having a briefing from our brother Emmanuel Edmund Yakani is Executive Director of CEPO. We'll be talking about the Unified Armed Forces or Armed Commands that was announced recently by the President of the Republic, Salva Kiir Mayardit. That's what we will be hearing, and we'll be talking about my brother Edmund Yakani. Welcome, Lagos State Media, once again. How are you, my brother?
Thank you very much. I'm fine, and hi to everyone, wherever you are, at whatever time zone you are. I would like to say thank you very much. Fine in Juba, at home, enjoying cloudy season, but I'm fine.
That is great. Yeah, recently the president has announced a unified armed forces command structure that having the police, army, security services. What's the reaction and how the people have received this news as they move forward for the Artigono, the peace that brought all of us in the Juba? Can you give us
thank you very much.
Yeah,
thank you very much. I think I will provide more in-depth briefings regard to what is it and how are they going to work, what are the challenges facing them, and what tasks can they undertake immediately. So first, I'd like to say this is a long-awaited decision that could have been done 2 years ago, right from early beginning of the pre-transitional period in 2020 would have got this particular process done, because it's a key task. And why this unification of the command structure is very important. I'm one of the person who used to say you can't do any security sector reform or transformation or professionalizing our army or security and defense sector until you have a unified structure of decision and orders. And we've been shouting over this for the last 2.5 years. At least now it's done. It's better than not having it. So
yeah,
the command structure is now unified. Why we need to have a unified command structure? Because without having a unified command structure, then the question of orders and directives to various military structures become problematic. Why? Because when the parties signed the agreement, you have two main players. That is the incumbent government with South Sudan People's Defense Force. Then you have SPLA, SPLM-IO, and then under SOA, you have a coalition of armed groups, which I'm quite sure is more than 5 armed groups under SOA. Each of them have a military. All these institutions that have military wings, each of the military wing have a chief of staff and have a commander-in-chief. So if you don't centralize this quite number of over, like if we are to speak to the current status, you may say His Excellency President Salva is Commander-in-Chief of South Sudan People's Defense Force. His Excellency First Vice President Dr. Riek Machar is Commander-in-Chief of SPLA-IO. And you may assume that His Excellency Vice President Abdul Bagi Ayi is Commander-in-Chief of all the forces under SOA. And of course, remember, under SOA, there's other commanders-in-chief of various wings. And they have also chief of staff. So you can't really engage in professionalizing security and defense sector or working on transforming security and defense sector or reforming security and defense sector when you have more than one commander-in-chief and you have more than one chief of staff. That is really things can't work. Even if you graduate the forces, the boots that need to be graduated over 8,000 something, if you graduate them and you don't have a centralized system of command, then that's going to be problematic. And this is where the unification of the command structure is very important to roll it out fast. Secondly, it's very important because you need to gain trust and confidence among the parties that have military wing to work for a security sector or a defense sector that pay allegiance to the constitution, neither to individuals or a particular party, but they pay allegiance to the constitution and to the laws that establish them to function as security and defense institutions. This is the importance of the unification of the structure. When the decree was issued, what were the reaction as per your question? Of course, the reaction is mixed. Majority are welcoming it, even including the international community have welcomed it. All diplomatic community, Troika, have welcomed the unification of the command structure. But of course, there are people, as you're taking the action of unifying the command structure, there are people who will feel aggrieved, specifically people who are in uniform affected by the unification of the command structure. And many of this goes to people who are in the incumbent system because they have to leave certain offices to make sure that unification, which I don't want to say they relinquish because the word relinquish sounds negative, but what happened is that they have to reconstitute various security institutions. And the concept of reconstitution is to bring in players from the other parties that have signed the agreement, because reconstitution, it is a political principle that leads to the signing of the agreement, that if the agreement is signed, one of the principles of action to be delivered after the agreement is reconstitution of governance institution, security and defense institution. So His Excellency President reconstitute. What did he did? He didn't done, His Excellency President have never ever done a personal selection of the members of the other armed groups. And also the other armed groups were not given the seats that they occupy now by the president. They went on what is called responsibility sharing. So they opt to choose whose takes what and whose takes what and what title and how do we balance. So the principle of balance and check were used among the parties. Mainly here we can name them now. The incumbent government in terms of security and defense is identified by South Sudan People's Defense Force. And then you have the SPLA, IO, and then you have the armed groups under SOA. So they went for choosing positions in various defense and security institutions. So that means the military wing, the National Security Service wing, the police wing, the prison service wing, the fire brigade, and the wildlife. So those are the powers that were shared. So they were able to share in terms of command system and departments of defense and security command system deeply was shared within the military, that it leads to 15 positions shared among the three players, the South Sudan People's Defense Force and the SPLA-IO and the SOA group. They have shared 15 positions per the percentage that they have agreed. Remember, the percentage is that the incumbent takes 60% of the 15, and then the opposition, which is mainly SPLA-IO and SOA, share the 40% of the 15. So 40% of the 15 represent opposition, and 60% of the 15 represent the incumbent. So national security, there were 6 seats that were proposed, and out of the 60 seats, out of the 6 seats, the incumbent government take 60% of the 6 seats, and then the opposition, which is combination of SPLIO and SOA, take 40% of the 6 seats. When you come to other institutions, mainly it is a position of Director General and Deputy Director that have been shared within the other position. With the police, of course, there's a position more than one, the IGP, the Deputy IGP, and then other positions that are within the Ministry of Interior or within the National Police Service. So that is the sharing. Of course, this sharing, it have its consequences. What are the consequences? The consequences are much more on the incumbent, because some of the incumbent have to vacate those seats with the principle of reconstitution, and the opposition have to bring in their candidates. But also one of the consequences that when the opposition leaders are deciding to bring in their candidates, there's a multiple choice among its members. So some members say, I'm much more better than X and Z. Why do you take X and Z to that particular seat that is allocated to us as opposition? Also within the opposition, there are people who are aggrieved. So from all sides, the incumbent have people who are feeling not happy, and within the opposition, the people who are not feeling happy because they are not being nominated to be appointed to the seats. And of course, this is a political game that nobody will go 100% for total agreement. Some people have to argue when they lose it. So the principle of like and dislike, we shouldn't find it as a source of tension or source of friction among ourselves. That's how public governance is. There's no seats that takes everybody. Some people have to lose it. So we need to have a patience. That is it. So now, what is the way forward for this unified command structure? One thing that they need to do as a unified command structure, because with the principle of being a unified command structure, now they pay allegiance to the Constitution. So one thing they need to do as a unified command structure, it is to forget the parties where they've come from. It is for them to act for the best interests of peace, security of individual and communities of South Sudanese wherever they are. So they have to pay allegiance to the Constitution. There's no more SPLA Woye, there's no more Viva, there's no more Take a Boom, because we need to unify those slogans. None of those slogans will work until we identify a unified slogan. Because if you start any either of this slogan, then you're paying allegiance to the part that you come from. So these things of SPLA Woye, Viva, Take a Boom, this one is not going to work. We're waiting for them to bring a new unified slogan that favor everybody, because these slogans is no longer there. We're not talking of South Sudan People's Defense Force. So we're no longer talking of any either of these slogans that I've had. That's one thing that they need to assure the nation, and they need to act on that. Secondly, is that also the individuals have occupied seats in the unified command structures should not be an individuals that want to please their political leaders, rather than meeting the required constitutional and legislative obligations, whereby they want to pay allegiance to one particular principle and they want to report about the other colleagues. It's a time for them to act as nationals. It's a time for them to stand up as a nationals. What does this mean? It means they need to have trust and confidence among themselves that right now the unified command structure for the sake of transforming the situation in South Sudan from where we are in a violence to peace. That's one thing they need to do. Second thing they need to do, they need to assert order and authority. As we're speaking now, if the unified command structure fail to stop pockets of violence that are claiming huge lives of our innocent citizens, you have seen what's happening in Lair. Yes. You have seen what is going on today in Joda. So yes, there's a still violence going between the ground commanders, fighting each other on the line of South Sudan People's Defense Force versus the SPLIO. So there's a one practice that I'd like to share with everybody here, that we have realized that some field commanders are actually undermining directives of their superiors, right from their commander-in-chief and up to the command structure. And there are some few field commanders who are using violence as a livelihood, because if they shoot a bullet, they can receive money. They can claim we are in a war, please send to us money for enforcement. So the commanders are using war as a livelihood. So you can see what's happening in Lair, you can see what's happening around Koch County, and you can see what's happening in Joda today, which is going on in Upper Nile. Still, we see, yes, exactly. We're losing quite a number of lives of our own citizens on the confrontation that you hear people are fighting as SPLA versus SPLIO versus South Sudan People's Defense Force. and less than 2 weeks or less than 10 days, there's already a unified command structure, and there's an agreement that was being signed, and that agreement was signed in Juba here, which calls for immediate cessation of hostility and for respect of the permanent ceasefire. So the question is, the unified command structure need to take a quick action by sending out directives to ground commanders that now we are no longer separate, we are now one. And also, any of the party among the unified command system did not need to embrace the culture of fueling violence on the ground, because there's some individuals on the ground that are paying allegiance to the parties that have now been unified in the command structure and is still fueling violence. So for me, it's a question of individuals that need to be disciplined as a ground commanders that are taking lives. And we have seen what happened in Lair. One of the disturbing picture in Lair is that a woman breastfeeding a child, and she's bleeding, and her blood is falling on the breast that the child is breastfeeding from. It's a very disturbing image where we say we have signed an agreement for cessation of hostility, we have signed an agreement for ceasefire to hold, and we have a unified command structure, and still these things are going. So these are some of the challenges facing them. The next thing after, if they have done that as a unified command structure, is for them as unified command structure to act as a nationalist, to act as a one structure, to unified ranks. My brother, one of the biggest things is that South Sudanese in the uniform love ranks like politicians loving titles. You know, one politician told me, Edmund, politics without a chair is not a politics. And somebody told me that, you know, in military insecurity, without a rank, that's not a military insecurity. You need to have a rank. So everybody create for himself. Even some of them, we are aware that they have self-promotion. They are not promoted on the basis of profession. You just run to the bush here and there. You come in, you defect from here and there. You go to the shop. You claim. Even some I don't name names here. Some people are promoting themselves through Facebook. Just somebody say, I'm promoted to this rank. He show himself in Facebook. Tomorrow, find he changes color and go to another site and say, now I'm coming back as this. So these need to be stopped by the unified command structure, is for them to unify the ranks. The other thing that they need to do as a unified command structure now is also for them to distance themselves from the political game of the politicians. Because if they still have allegiance to the politicians, which is very hard, by the way, in our context, that we're going to do that, they need to disconnect themselves from politicians who want to politicize the security and defense sector. At the same time, also, they need to act as a nationalist. They don't need to act as a tribal ranks and tribal commanders. This is not a unified tribal command structure. This is a unified national command structure. So they need to forget about their tribal allegiance. They need to pay allegiance to the nation and the state. Those are some of the tasks that is required from them and things that are required from them immediately. But also one of the things that they need to do is they need to start showing the nation that they are acting together. Because one of the challenges is that if you have a unified command structure, but you don't see a unified actions and unified move among them, still people raise questions. Are this really a unified structure? Are this really a unified command structure? Because it's very important to have that professional in the security sector, that you must have a unified structure in order to mainstream the rest of the unification processes. Of course, before them, they need to deliver so much to unify this. One of the things that I can conclude with that now, having a unified command structure, now at least we have a center of a decision for security and defense. Because by then we don't have a center for that. Every party have their own center. Now we have one single center for making decisions with regard to our defense and security affairs, which is very good. If they can leave political allegiance, if they can leave allegiance to individuals, if they can leave allegiance to tribes. That's one thing we don't take. But other external factors that they need to handle as a unified structure. One is they need to sit down and discuss how to manage the Kitgwang process. Because of the Kitgwang group are discontented. And as we're speaking now, some few hours ago, we hear that the Kitgwang group, Garwich is calling his advance team from Juba to leave. So the question is, are they ready? Group, and will the Kitgwang group not declare revolution against the unified command structure by saying we are left out? Of course, we are aware that the Kitgwang group, it naturally died. It have died. Why they died? Because they have signed an agreement of integration in South Sudan People's Defense Force. So their faith is no longer under anybody. Their faith is under South Sudan People's Defense Force. So Kitgwang have to be under there. And even the Agwelek, they all the same belong to South Sudan People's Defense Force. So it's a question of now, they need to start asking themselves, how can they handle other groups like Kitgwang group? That's one thing. Secondly, they need to start changing attitudes. And these are building an attitudes of dealing with the whole out groups or dealing with the non-signatories of the revitalized agreement through Rome peace process, that they have to go and sit on the table and negotiate with their own peace process as a unified command structure rather than confrontation. These are some of external things that they need to put on the table and they need to handle well. But also besides that, they need to really consider DDR as a central element of making sure those who may need to be reintegrated from military or from uniform to civilian life, because you're going to have big number. If you are to really follow the provision of Chapter 2 in terms of professionalize the army, you have big number of individuals in all security and defense institutions that are going to be left out. Now they need to be reintegrated into civilian life. So there's a need to invest on DDR. Finally, whatever will make them function well and will make them not dragged, it is the availability of the political will at the presidency level and the resources. Because remember, unification is not free. Unification, you need to invest on money. So also the unified command structure need to sit down and convince the principals, mainly at the level of the presidency, to avail them political will without any restriction and to avail them resources that they can take it further. And the resources should not be meant for marrying new wives for the commanders and the generals in the unified structure. Because sometimes South Sudanese, when you see more money, you come to find unified structure, instead of focusing to graduate unification of the other forces, they start thinking about marriages. So you say here, oh, commander so-and-so, who is among the unified command structure, have married 2 more wives or 3 more wives. And that means too much access to public income. So also one thing we need from them is that they need to dedicate their time to work as nationals for the better transformation of this country. Now, what are some of the, if I can say, false or fake news around that I'm hearing in the social media, and I'm hearing in Juba and I'm hearing in the diaspora, and which I would like to take this opportunity by saying, South Sudanese, wherever you are, the more you think tribally, the more you're causing disaster to this country. Wherever you are, I'm not really blaming diaspora in general. Wherever you are, any South Sudanese that sit on any responsibility seat and is thinking tribally, and you want to protect a tribe, you make no difference with those who are causing harm to our innocent citizens in this country. It's a time that we need to embrace our tribal differences as a value, as a wealth, that for our national identity. We should not use it for political decisions. So there's something which is going on, which is I'm not happy. The people who are promoting this message is that Nuer of Tabandeng is out, Nuer of Riek Machar is in, which is, for me, it is irresponsible language that people are talking about it. This is a unified command structure that we don't identify them with tribes. So there are people who are using that language. Let's say that's very bad. That's completely very bad that you start turning like it's only an exchange. And this has went as far as for non-Nuer and non-Dinka was saying the unified command structure, it's a unified command structure for Dinka and Nuer only. I'm telling people, 15 seats cannot take 64 tribes. But we need to be genuine that we use merits in terms of sharing these powers. So this is some of the false and the fake news, that hate speeches that are and hostile propaganda that I'm asking always South Sudanese, wherever you are, never ever create any space for yourself as a space of influence to gain your tribal interest. That is very bad, because some people start doing analysis. I tell you, today I was in a tea place, in a group where some people are that there's an area here in Juba, close to Juba University, called Haisoura. You find young people sit there, take tea. So I just want to assess what the reactions are. So I went to take a tea. And a cup of tea in South Sudan, it's always a political space. Either you discuss funeral of so-and-so, or you discuss corruption of ministers. So not, our tea places are not places for normal. It's actually a center of news. You want to hear news, and that's why the fake news are. So I was taking tea. I find a group leveling the unified command structure on tribal line. Filande Gebila Filan. This one here is this tribe. This one here is this tribe. This one here is this tribe. This is uncle to this. This is cousin to this. This is. I start looking. Then when will you embrace? When will you embrace time that we have a structure of governance that will take us? So these are challenges that we have on the ground.
Sorry, your network is a bit distorting. You're coming cutting.
Yes. Sorry. It's cloudy here also. Yeah. It's a cloudy here. Maybe it's also affecting us. But in conclusion, so that maybe I can get questions from people, from audience who are listening. I would like to say the unification of the command structure is a great step forward, but it requires trust and confidence. It requires political will and commitment. It requires allocation of resources, and it requires us to stop allegiance to our tribes, to our parties, to our slogans. We must pay allegiance to the Constitution. We will make South Sudan great one day, and we'll enjoy it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Edmund Yakani, for this great briefing you have given us. For all our audience who are following us and watching this, and if you have a question, you can just send it in, and then we will bring it up, and Edmund is happy to answer your questions. Um, yeah, the South Sudanese, they are just going parallel with the peace that has been followed and board with so many precious ways that the government is following it up with some opposition who are in, but there are the people also who are behind pulling it down. There is a plan of demonstration that is going to take place in USA, Washington D.C. These people are against the government or unified government. Though these uh, good steps they are being taken, they are still pulling on the other side. So, what can you tell the South Sudanese who are planning to go for demonstration, asking for the exiting the president and the vice president, Dr. Yak Mashar, and they are blaming the government in different things which cannot explain them here because everybody they have different agendas or different interests and they just collide. Some hands are vividly behind this plan, and these are politicians. Some of them they have signatures in some part of the peace agreement in Rome, and now they are planning to overthrow the government, and they don't believe what is what is taking place now. What advice can you give us?
In the modern world, the freedom of expression, assembly, and association is a democratic value that is embraced in any democratic, progressive society, that people can express their opinion as long as you don't use violence to claim lives and properties of innocent citizens. That is a constitutional right in every constitution all over the world with regard to Bill of Rights, that you can express yourself. But one thing that also you need to really check is that when you are expressing your freedom or your rights, you must take into account that you have responsibility to safeguard your freedom and rights. And part of your responsibility is to start looking at the principle of what can we do as an alternative, and what can we do if we don't achieve the alternative that we can do as a compromising ground. And that's why the concept of compromising and tolerance in political science is very important for everybody who have a political ideology of changing. And that's why agreements have to come to work. You can't battle. You'll see we have been struggling since 1983 with insults, with weapons, with bullets against the regime in Khartoum. We end up signing the CPA. None of us is winning, but all of us are losing lives that we couldn't do anything. So the question is now, it's a time of dialogue that we need to do, but also it's a time that we need to be matured political enough that transitioning of power from one end to another end, or from one entity to another entity, have to be in a peaceful manner, in an honorable manner, because you can see across the continent and you can see across the globe where you start moving in a way that you feel forcefully, let's move to that direction. Always the consequences are. Look at, it's not far. Look at our neighbor Sudan. Some people are saying, yes, let the political protests continue, but we're losing lives, we're losing economy, and we're losing generations in the streets of demonstrations in Sudan. So people are asking, what alternatively can we do? And you may have some people who stand completely rigid, that they're not ready to compromise. Their ground is final. So the difference is that if you ask them, you're rigid because you're outside the incumbent system. What about if it happened that you sit on the same seat you're claiming that that person will go? What will happen? You will end up like speaking like Museveni. Museveni was saying African leaders' problem was that they stay too much in power. When Museveni stayed too much in power, he's asked, he said, no, the problem is that they stay in power and they're not democratic. And he's asked, like, will you end up as a democratic leader? He said, if I'm a dictator and then if I'm elected 7 times, then I'm a very good dictator. So this particular political ideology, you need to stop it. So my advice to South Sudan is, if you hold power, don't retain power by being aggressive. If you want to access power, don't access power in a way that makes you claim lives and property of innocent citizens. So time to embrace dialogue. And we must all accept dialogue. If you're holding power, accept dialogue around the power you're holding. If you want to access power, also accept dialogue. And I think that's, for me, is the biggest thing. And one of the biggest things challenging us South Sudanese, all of us, wherever we are now, that we, at our various capacity, at our various ideology, at our various status, we are facing tests. The test is Pope Francis and Archbishop of Canterbury is visiting South Sudan. It's for the first time in the history of the world, the two have moved to one conflict-prone state. So those who are incumbent in terms of governance need to ask themselves, what do we offer on the table if Pope visits Juba at a time? Those who are in opposition or those who are opponent to the incumbent should ask themselves, what do we have alternative that we can offer to the table? So that means what? That means at the center, we should not demonize anyone, but we should sit on the ground that we all dialogue and we all speak. And we must accept dialogue as a principle of getting things to move. But politically, globally, it's people's right to express themselves. It's people's rights to speak out. You can do whatever you want to do. But the question comes is, if we have things that are registered as positive, can we appreciate? But that should not compromise us, not condemning what we have seen negative. So for me, the more you have culture, political culture of embracing positive things, and you have political culture that when the negatives are done, you speak to the negative. We need to build a culture, spade is a spade. When comes time of spade, call it spade. When comes a time that you find the spade is black, don't turn it to be white. When it's white, say it's white. When it's black, say it's black. So for me, it's a question of, we need to ask ourselves, who do we need to transition our country from the current situation to a better situation? All of us, whether incumbent or in opponent, which for me is a common culture and sometimes disturbing me, is we need an external player. Like, we couldn't implement agreement without external player. We could express ourselves as a player. And sometimes here in Juba, people like us are seen as opponent because of that. We speak to the truth. We speak to spade. Black is black, white is white. So it's a high time for us to take responsibility as South Sudanese. How much we want to back up, how much we need a backup from external, also we need to ask ourselves, what's the best interest behind that? And that's why at least processes like implementation or revitalize peace agreement, where we see positive step, let's embrace it to raise the morale and to encourage those who have the responsibility to go further to a better choice we want to do. And when we have Rome peace process, let's go for it. Let's talk, let's dialogue so that we bring more gains that will lead us to transition our society from where we are now to stability. And for me, this is the biggest challenge. For example, let me give you this example. Now we have unified command structure with over 20 or 30 people. It's only 30% of them were practically engaged in negotiating chapter 2. Over 70% of them are not part and parcel of the negotiating team, but they have a document before them to implement. So it means what? They need to be oriented, they need to be educated. Now, if we leave them to go in the way ignorantly to implement the agreement, should we complain? It's a high time for us also to bring them on the table, educate them, take them through to understand the task is required from them. So my advice in conclusion is that let us be responsible enough and let us make sure that none of us take any strengths to make sure that you want to suppress the others. And if you want to express yourself, where there's a positive, give thanks to. Where there's a negative, don't keep silent. That's my advice to South Sudanese, wherever you are, as you're listening or you're watching this particular deliberations or this particular discussion we're in now. Thank you. Over there.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Edmund Yakani, for that answering. Where we have some few questions here. All right. Daniel Deng said here, what would Mr. Edmund say about slogan of president? The piece was designed in a way that make it difficult to be implemented. Is it because peace agreement is talking about accountability on political, economic, and transitional justice? That's a question from Daniel Deng. And also another guy, Marco Mawin Marang, says, why is your organization, CEPO, silent over the Abiy attacks by Misria and Sudanese armed forces? Did you find out why is Africa is using wrong map on its website? Why are MPs to East community silent about it? Have they given up? Let me triangle to Kenya. Okay. Makwir Marur. Now that the security arrangement is holding, do you think the election will be possible comes 2023? These are the three questions you will just wrap up with. No, unmute yourself.
Yes,
Unmute yourself.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yes, I did. So yeah, thank you very much. Thanks to the brothers who have asked these questions, and to sisters who are also listening. First, the slogan of the peace agreement is meant to be difficult to be implemented. It's a question of level of trust and confidence that will gain, because people talk about rebuilding trust and confidence, but for me, I really speak about regaining trust and confidence. So it's a question of regaining trust and confidence is still under challenge, or in other terms, that there's a still deficit in trust and confidence. But as things move, and if we see when the president was recently addressing the nation when there's a panic in Juba, the president said sustained dialogue. That's the language the president used. Sustained dialogue is the best way to implement the agreement. So it's difficult to implement, but if they have a sustained dialogue, and by sustained dialogue it means they need to have a regular mechanism of the presidency to implement the agreement. And maybe I'll take opportunity also here to clarify to South Sudanese. I've had many South Sudanese who say that RGMEC, which is a mechanism entrusted to monitor and evaluate the implementation of the agreement, CITISM, which is a mechanism task to verify and monitor the violation of the ceasefire, there's a many South Sudanese who say they failed to deliver their task to implement the agreement. One of the messages I would like to correct is that if you look at the agreement, there's Article 1.1.1, which says a revitalized transitional government of national unity will be established and trusted to implement this agreement. It is our responsibility as South Sudanese to implement the agreement. So with the Article 1.1.1, which says a revitalized government of national unity will be established and trusted to implement this agreement, part of the entrustment of the government, it is the mechanism of the presidency. In the mechanism of the presidency is 100% South Sudanese top leaders, from president, first vice president, and other vice presidents. They have the primary responsibility to avail political will, to avail resources. And if that particular mechanism have no sustained meetings, then means there's an absence of sustained dialogues. And absence of sustained dialogues, rumors take charge. And that's why the language is difficult to implement, because there's no sustained dialogue among them. Secondly, this agreement is meant in a template that you need to do some key tasks. You can't deliver them all, but you can move with them. Some of them are actually a post-government arrangements that, for example, things like reforms. You can't deliver reforms in 2 years' time. Reforms, it goes to legislation, institutional setup, institutional culture, human resource that are available in that particular institution, even the institutional infrastructure, what is set up there, and this take into the setup of the country infrastructure system. Like, for example, if I give a simple example, if you want to go for e-government, you want to reform the government to be e-government, you need to ask the capability of the government in terms of access to internet. So some of these things are long-term, but some of them are going to be post. But at least you need to deliver the essential stages. So that's, for me, my answer to the question of it's difficult to implement. It is still there's a deficit in trust and confidence. When you have trust and confidence, nothing is difficult to implement. And of course, this is coming from the level of that people are receiving so much external pressure in regard to the agreement. The language of the call around South Sudan, African countries are using South Sudan wrong map. This issue, we have raised it several times. And even not only the map, I don't know if some of you are applying for visas, if you apply for hotel booking online, if you're applying for airlines online. There are some specific global companies, multinational companies, or intercontinental companies. If you go to their down list of countries, South Sudan is not there. Even there's some scholarships that are coming. You go to the down list, you don't find South Sudan, you find Sudan. So South Sudan is already incorporated. What is this? This is a responsibility of our Ministry of Foreign Affairs to communicate to certain institutions and to make statements. So there's a still, yes, misuse of a wrong map. There's a still, in some particular institutions, absence of the name of the nation called South Sudan. And this is what we have been raising it. And the person will say, I think you can Google online. You can see we have several times speak to airline companies to make sure South Sudan is in their down list. And I think the map, several times I've been talking about correction of a map. That's what I'm saying. A colleague who asked about the ABA situation, we've been condemning ABA. It's not that we have been silent. We're not been silent. And specifically when you have, for the first time for us to see Twitch and Ngok Dinka fighting, for the first time in history. We've never seen this in history before. We have been aggressive on that. And that's why we push President to put a committee. Unfortunate thing is that also President established committee out of the members of the conflicting committees, which that he could appoint different people, get Acholi, Mati, Lutuko, or look for Zande and Boya, send them there to investigate. But when the sons and daughters of the conflicting communities, always there's a position that they check. They don't look into it. Like what is going on now in Ler, we're able to pressurize, though some of our colleagues, and even some of us who have received threats, some of us who are locked in, but later on were released after time, is simply want to hold the duty bearers in our country accountable. So we are not being silent on the issue of ABA. And of course, ABA is also have a big issue between Juba and Khartoum to agree on the status of ABA. Because after the status of ABA is not been decided upon between Juba and Khartoum. And we've been pushing AU to make sure that Juba and Khartoum responded, because it's a leftover task of AU with regard to the fate of it. So we are not been silent. We have been speaking about it. That's what I'd like to raise it. Our EAC members, why are they silent? You know, it's become a question of jurisdictions. When it comes to the peace agreement continentally is AU. When it comes to regional economical body is IGAD. And what IGAD did is that IGAD keep EAC a bit distant. But what we're doing is that we use EAC to mobilize some of the EAC members that are members of the IGAD. For instance, like Rwanda, like Uganda, like Kenya is a rapporteur. So use EAC to speak at the EAC capacity that they don't, but they push the members at IGAD level to respond. And that's why recently Uganda responded, and Kenya also as a rapporteur of IGAD responded. And I think that's what I'd like to say over that. But also, of course, is a question, as I said, is the jurisdictions that they need to speak. But also these are individuals that I don't want to challenge them, but it's the individual positions that you have seen them. Now, the question is, if unified security structure is holding and the unification is going ahead, can we hold elections? I would like to say what we need to speak about is we need to speak about well preparation for elections. Why well preparation for elections? There are other factors that have direct impact on elections. For instance, you can unify the forces right now. You can graduate the unified forces now. But if still our communal violence is going on, what's happening in Lakes, what's happening in Jongole, you hear these communities, and these days it become like it's a normal language. 15 people die in a cattle wrestling. 15 people die somewhere there. One particular community come and raided and adopted. It looks like a normal things. Now, when come elections, those pockets of violence is going to be a big issue. Who is going to campaign there? So it's a question also we need to make sure we prevent the intercommunal violence that are claiming lives of people that we see. A death of a single South Sudanese is a national issue. But these days in our media outlets, there's a report of 20 people died, 10 died. Looks like it's a simple thing. Those are lives. Those are numbers of innocent citizens who are losing them across the country. So you need to assert rule of law. This is one thing. Without asserting rule of law, it's going to be problematic. But we need to prepare for a well elections. To enactment of the legislations, the National Electoral Law, the Political Party Acts, and then you need to move also to reconstitute the National Election Commission, reconstitute the Political Party Council. Then after that, you may need to have a bit of a constitutional making process in a place where when you elect a government, the government take off the new constitution. And right now, as we're speaking, the bill for constitutional making process have been presented to the parliament 2 or 3 days ago. And the country is going for transition. So I would like to say, if the leaders can commit themselves for these tasks within the next 3 or 4 months, they can speak of elections, because elections require a conducive environment. And remember also you have still hold-out groups that are issuing statements. You need to engage if you do go for elections. But obviously, one of the best way for us to end transition in South Sudan, an interim system in South Sudan, is for us to have elections. Elections is the only option for peaceful and honorable transfer of power. But we need to create a conducive environment for elections. And I've mentioned things that may define conducive environment for elections, as I've mentioned, legislations, institutional reforms, the question of enforcing rule of law, the question of ensuring that no communities are feeling any pain as we're going to election because so that they can vote with the peace. That's what I like to raise, what I would like to raise with regard to elections. But this one, let's say, but of course, my point of that I would like to repeat and I would like to insist forward is that the unified command structure, we need to embrace them and we need to make sure that we push them to do what is required. Because at least now we don't have too many spokespersons. You have seen our military spokesperson. Some say we're in a war with so and so. Some say we're in self-defense. So at least now we're going to have one spokesperson out of the unified structure that somehow will not make the social media commanders in chief. Because I know there's some commanders in chief who declare war in social media before the war is declared on the ground. So it's a high time that we need to embrace a positive development that takes our country away from the current situation to a better situation that we describe with peace, stability, and making sure that we love each other as we love ourselves. Thank you. Over there to you.
All right, thank you so much, Edmund. Abraham is here. If you have any question, Abraham, you can add in, because there are no questions here otherwise.
Okay, thank you, Brother Ijmon, for coming in. And it's wonderful that to give us an update what's going on and for the security arrangement and unified forces command. This is the long wait for the government, SPLIG and SPLIO and SOA to do this. This is what hold the peace back. And hopefully, starting unified the command, this should be the roadmap for the country to move toward peace. My question: I see a lot. I see a lot of people on social media complain that the name when those names are released, and those name majority of those commander, they are from Dinka, and the rest are from Nuer. Another tribe have been left out. So what can you tell to other communities that who are complaining? Is it his network is
Network, yes, his network. Yeah.
okay? Let's wait and see. He's back on.
Oh yeah.
So either do you want to put the link in public? Probably, yeah. Maybe don't put the link in public. If somebody want to join, let us know. But
Yeah, no, it's all right. Yeah, they should write their questions right here because it's on a briefing interview.
okay. Okay, let's wait for him to come back. Okay.
Yeah, here it is coming.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Go
colleagues,
ahead.
the weather bit made me off, but I'm back.
Okay, thank you for coming back here. So this is the complaining. What do you think about, in your opinion, what do you see the
I was a
unified
bit off. Is there any question to it?
Yes, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Hello, Edmund. Do you hear us?
Edmund, can you hear us? He's on mute.
Can you hear us? No, he can't. He can't hear us. It's
Okay.
frozen. Unmute yourself, and if you hear us, can you unmute yourself? Network is a bit difficult here.
Okay, let me respond to Deng Makir. Deng Makir, your comment say I'm losing credibility in Lagos State media if it is continue hosting has been yeah. So Deng Makir, what's wrong with the Hasmin for hosting it? You know, in Lagos State media, we welcome everybody. There's no discrimination in our media platform. So if you losing your credibility in Lagos State media is up to you. We are not forcing you. We are not here to please everybody. So all the voices are welcome here in Lagos State media. So if you don't like what Lagos State media is not doing, you just don't watch it. We are not here to please anybody or to say what you want you has to do. No, we welcome everybody in this media platform. The media is for everybody, so we don't have that. So please, you are entitled to your opinion and continue to do so. So thank you. I hope I answer your point. So yeah, if you want to say something about that, Isaac, you can continue.
Yeah, I want to say something. I have deleted two comments from Deng Makir. Deng Makir, if you have a personal problem with the organization or the individuals, Lagos State media is a platform for everybody, as Abraham put it to you. So please bear with us. You are entitled to your comments, but this is unacceptable. You cannot come and say, I don't need Mr. X here or Y here or there. So thank you.
So
Yeah,
okay.
go ahead.
So go back to the question. Yes, husband, can you hear me?
Edmund, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hello?
Okay, Esmond.
All right,
So
yeah.
so the question, my question is regarding about
I can
people.
hear you. I can hear you.
Okay, my question is regarding about people who are complaining that
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Isaac, can you hear me? I seem like Edmond is not
Yes,
hearing me.
you are loud and clear, Abraham. It is
Okay.
on the side of Edmund that have echo. It comes a bit, some second late. Yeah, it's okay. Go ahead.
Oh, it's a network, yeah.
Mm.
So what do you want to say about those people who are complaining about that does other community are not involved or are not including in the unified forces or unified commander? So I want you to elaborate more about that. Okay, it seems like you cannot hear me.
Edmund, did you hear the question from Abraham? Then go ahead to answer.
Okay. So should I go ahead?
Yes, go ahead.
Should I go ahead?
Yep, go ahead.
Can I go ahead? I heard you.
Yep, go ahead. Go ahead.
I heard you. I heard you. If you're hearing me,
It's so bad. Juba network is not working. It's not doing good. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for those commenting, yes, it's good sometimes our people to having open minding, to see how you say that if you dislike somebody and you say, oh, I don't want this, that's not the way, and this is not how we can move forward.
It is waning, but I don't know if I can answer you, but the question you have asked.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay,
Yeah,
go ahead.
yeah, go ahead to answer.
One of the disturbing things for me in a South Sudanese society, it is when people start looking from an ethnic line. This tribal lens of evaluating things, and this culture of concluding that some particular people are biased and some are the best. We need to honestly, if we have gone to school and if we're educated, we need to honestly have a platform to discuss about it. Because it's not only affecting in the social media or in this Lex TV platform, it's affecting churches, even religious institutions. People are start administering affairs of religious institutions from tribal line. So it does not start from anywhere. It starts with all of us who are in this platform. The way we think about others is the way how we want to frame the society. So this, for me, being part and parcel of this peace agreement negotiation, you find somebody can stand up and say, my tribe is not inclusive, but let them have the chance, they will split up. So the question is now, we need to start changing the attitude of looking at ourselves from tribal lens. We need to start looking at the merits. Who among us as South Sudan, regardless of his community, regardless of his tribe, that can make this country great and can make this country embracing everybody's opinion, idea, culture, image. That's what we need to start thinking about it. Because if we keep on looking into things that we feel, and for me it becomes shameless that some of us who claim we have gone to school, I like to repeat myself. One phrase that I like is from Adwog Nyaba, that one of the failure of us after we got our independence with so many degree holders is simply because we think tribally. We believe that so and so without them, this system is not there. Like I've seen some of your colleagues here saying, I'm losing trust on Lex Media because for hosting me. Am I the problem? If I'm the problem, be straightforward. Is Lex Media the problem? Or because you believe that this particular media is customized for us only to speak? That's why I would like to that actually, if asking me to respond to Maker, I will ask Maker, is Lex Media for Maker alone to speak? And can you say a nationalist there? And that's the angle we need to avoid it. So that's why for people like Deng Maker, I will say, Maker, this media platform is not for you. This media platform is for the whole nation. It's not customized for specific ideologies or individuals. So it's a question that and this is why we need to build the South Sudan we want. It's South Sudan where we can embrace dialogue and embrace culture. And also I'd like to say the complaints around the unification of the forces. Unification of forces is a party work, it's a party business. It's not a business that you need to take science into it. It's the way how influence is built, how institutional up is built, how individual is built. It's a high time for us to start, and that's why we say moving to a democratic process. We'll continue this debate until we will turn this country into pieces. It's a high time for us to talk. It's a high time to start us embracing, and it's a transformation process. If some of us have read the ancient traditional history that man is living in a changing society, you don't have to change will change you. So let's work towards a positive change that will change those of us who have a negative thinking of the change. And that's why one of my biggest challenges is that when will South Sudanese think in a South Sudanese way? When shall we stand up as a nationalist for a national agenda? When shall we leave the culture of length of tribal? Changing of Archbishop of a Catholic Church, some people have to claim is undemocratic. Change of bishop in board, some people have to take AK-47. A bishop who died, some people say, no, because it's from our community, we take over. This is our seat. Now, until when? So we need to stop that as people have gone to school. It's a high time for us to speak. It's a high time for us to embrace culture of dialogue. So for me, that particular blame is the best that if we can commit ourselves for transition in the system. But also that's not mean that we should remain silent. We should speak out, things are like that. So when we speak out, let's not speak out with an element of discrimination against others. Let's speak out that we tell here is the mistake and here is the solution and here is my contribution to the solution. So This is the message I'd like to convey to all of us who are watching this particular media platform. The honest is that we can't build South Sudan at a ground of mistrust and lack of confidence. We need to build South Sudan when we have trust and confidence among ourselves. And we need to make sure that we really stand up and we remain as much as national as we are there. Because the way how the mistakes of those who are in system have made, we should not impress it. And I've seen one person asking about the question of really inclusivity. Inclusivity is a key principle for us in South Sudan. So that we need to work to make sure that we're inclusive. And for us to be inclusive is for us to speak out. And when you speak out is also when our voice is counted. And that's how inclusivity goes to the level that to representation, participation, and embracing that. And of course, one of the biggest things is that the system of the governance, if you don't fix it well, then the element of inclusivity will not be there. But also, if you don't change our attitudes, because I will tell you, I will tell every South Sudanese in this platform, and every South Sudanese can come and challenge me. Our ministries that we have now, the 36 ministries, is 36 ministries, go to office of the ministers. The tribe that in that ministry speak that language. All across these 64. You go to the ministries, and I want somebody to challenge me. I've moved to different ministries of different tribes. Office of the minister is the language in the office of the minister is the language of the minister. Now, which tribe do you want to blame here? Every tribe, they're there. They're there. If it is from Equatorial region, you say Banda are there, you can hear the language. If you go to Western Equatoria, Guinea is there, you hear the language. You go to Moro, Ingonya is there. You go to Dongo, you go to wherever, you go to Shulu. People speak, and even in the parliament, they Kakun themselves, they speak the language. So it is us who are here in this platform to start embracing the change. Because as we speak here that we are marginalized, one of you was given that ministry, use the language there, another person will feel discriminated. So for me, it's a time for us to change our attitudes, to be nationalists, and it's a time for us to show that we have gone to school. Why do you want to move from tribal lands and you say you claim you're either a degree holder or a PhD holder, or you claim that I'm educated? Now, what is the difference between you and the paramount chief? And even sometimes the paramount chiefs are much more better. Without going to school, they administer Sudan better. But for those of us who go to school, we get more spoiled and get more ethnic central that want to discriminate others and feel others have no platforms that they should speak. So it's a high time. You must embrace each other. So when we start embracing each other, it's a high time where inclusivity comes to existence. Thank you over there.
All right, thank you so much, Edmund. I think we have come to the end of the program. You have answered all the questions that was given to you, and the briefing that you have done also to us also is good. We have to say thank you, and we are looking forward to see you again in this platform. Should we need more information down from Juba direct. We are far away, 1,000 miles away from Juba, but you are really very connected, and the social media being misused by our people. They are misleading the community, misinforming us. So when we give out the reality, this is where we get some disagreement with some of the people who have already taken the wrong information or wrong path. They are walking in a different path. So we have to bring them back and tell them the truth. This is what we can do, and this is what we are doing. Abraham, if you have anything that you need to add in, you can come in and we will close this show. And I thank everybody here, those who have lay in their questions and their comments. Matot, thank you for your comments. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you, Isaac and Brother Edmund. Actually, I have my last question regarding about Edmund. You are one of member of civil society, and I see we've been here in the United States. We're having debating with other group of South Sudanese who are doing a rally to DC. It will take place in May 7th.
May.
And when we're having a discussion saying that the main reason they are going there, they are going to do a rally. They are calling for the government to step down. And when we argue with them that you guys, this is not the right time to call for the rally. This is a time for peace that the government and the rebel movement, they are making peace. Our people need that peace. So let us support this peace. And these people who creating this rally are the member of SOMA. And when we point these kind issues out, they come and attack and disagree in a way, which is a healthy way. So my question to you, their argument, they're saying that the reason why they do rally in diaspora because in South Sudan, the government don't give the citizen of South Sudan a freedom, a free of speech, a freedom to go and do rally, assembly. They think the government of South Sudan is not giving that. If you're doing that in Juba, you will end up in Blue House. So my question to you, as a leader of civil society, in South Sudan, in capital Juba, are they not allowed the civilian citizen to go outside on the street to protest? If they say that the government is not doing the right thing, you can go out any ministry office or J1 to do protest and put and raise up your sign. So what do you want to say about this group of people that in diaspora that they're going to DC in in May 7 for rally? Is it a good time to do so? So go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. My honest opinion that I'm going to express based on the question you have raised is that one, of course, in political science, people have the freedom of, in terms of
Isaac, I
my
cannot hear
opinion
him.
that I would like to raise to your question. I hope you're getting me.
I can hear him here. He is very loud and clear. Go ahead,
So
Edmund.
I hope now I'm clear. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, my answer was like what Isaac asked before. I've said in a political science, people have the freedom of expression and speech and assembly and association everywhere. That's a principle in any constitution that they have the right to show their political opinion of what they think it should be. But normally what I like to say is that when I'm showing an opinion, of course, that's in diaspora. If I wish to be is that let us show it responsibly without damaging any innocent people's properties and all this. But of course, this is diaspora, and I'll come and give my opinion on what they're thinking about. And then in terms of the ground in Juba, the reality is this, as I'm on the ground, that the civic space we have in the ground is shrinking. And one of the example I can share with everybody in these particular media outlets that of what is happening is that you come to realize that there's an exercise which was done yesterday here in Juba with regard to, actually 2 days ago, an exercise was done in Juba with regard to the situation in Lair. And that's, I want to use it as a testimony, as a practical testimony. A group of youth, which I went together with them and with some parliamentarians, we stood before the parliament. You know, our parliament is no longer in the original its building. We're having it in Freedom Hall. So with the placards that people have written, please hold the commanders in Lair accountable. Please want accountability of Lair. Some of our colleagues were picked up and taken to a CID or a premises. Sometimes we call it a national security premises in Jeng Emmanuel Church in High Cinema. There's a premises which by then it was an insurance building for Sudan. By then they're locked there. For some few hours they were released. The reality that we have different opinion when it comes to freedom of expression on the ground. There are people who tend that they are protecting the system and they picked up. And personally, when that exercise of Lair happened, I followed up and I rushed and I spoke to some leaders. And of course, I had my own insults. I've been insulted for you are for the West, you have been bored, you are whatever. I had those insults. But the reality is that when you go up higher to decision makers, you come to realize that junior officers on the ground make decisions that are not directed from the seniors. And this is where the mess is when it comes to freedom of expression. That you come to realize A mere security officer, because he feels a security officer, he is having an automatic mandate to arrest and detain. So imagine you pick that quite number of people from the parliament and you dump them in that particular premises. When we start speaking out, we start calling for accountability, boss are saying, no, we are not involved, let them be released. They are released. But already it is a record against the state, is a record against the government. And the record justify voices that says freedom of expression and civic space in the country is shrinking. And people like us, when you come to that particular situation, you feel harassed or intimidated, then we add our voice to that. The reality is that people have the political right to express themselves. And of course, back here home, as I've said, is that the civic space is not so much free in the way how we express. So a mere security officer can turn something that does not intend to be handled in the way, but because they act that they have a state power, they lock people in. So for me, it's a question of discipline within security institutions here back in Juba, whom sometimes take the law into their hand without receiving directive. Because if they're going to their bosses, like when this group of youth were arrested, when I heard about it, the first person I ran to is IGP. I said, is there any warrant of arrest issue for these people? I was with them in the parliament. And because they picked when they were outside, I was inside, I entered inside the parliament. Then they picked outside the parliament. So for me, it's a question of that, look here, things have to be respected in terms of freedom of expression. But of course, this group have an opinion. One thing that I like to raise is that as you identify them as they belong to the group of Soma, I think resumption of Rome peace process is very important. But of course, you said Soma, I don't know which Soma. For us who are back home here, when talk of Soma, we normally identify them. Soma, Thomas Cirillo, Soma, Paul Malong, because this is the way how we're getting them here, because South Sudanese are like of having two brands. There's no institution that have no one single brand. Every institution have two brands. So, but advice that resumption of Rome peace processes is the best option, because we can hate each other, we can insult each other, we can turn each other apart. But at the end of the day, South Sudan is our home. So the question is, how do we want to use our differences to build a better home? We have seen the history of Rwanda. They have committed genocides, but Rwanda today is different. So my answer is a time, let's talk, is a time, let's embrace to hear the voice of others, is a time when you hear the voice of others, let's consider and let's take them to an action. Otherwise, I have not much. I'd like to say with this particular media platform, let's continue the dialogue, let's continue the interaction. I know we may not embrace opinion of everybody. We may have a take of somebody's opinion, but the best is that whenever we go to the space to speak, let's tell the truth, let's stand for the truth, let's stand as a nationalist, let's build a nation that we aspire to have it. Let's avoid the element of intimidation, harassment, and denying others or qualifying some particular group to be the best over the others. For me, whatever the platform you have put, I would like to say, stop propaganda that does not help the building of the nation. And this is the message that I would like to convey to every South Sudanese wherever they are. This South Sudan, we can't build through complaints. We'll build it when you accept the reality. We'll build it when you embrace whatever is positive that we have seen in front of us, because we can't continue be seeing things negatively. Whatever we see positive, we embrace it, and what we see negative, we correct it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Edmund. It's a good response and a good advice to all our fellow South Sudanese, both in diaspora and back home. So you have answered the question of Abraham Madid. I think he didn't listen to you. He can't hear you before, but the question is answered. So all our audience, we have to say thank you so much for being with us all this way long. And we appreciate your questions, and we just stay tuned. We're going to talk more about other things, which is a heavy topic. Now, Edmund, I don't need to involve you in today or tonight, this afternoon, evening, wherever the other people at time zone might be. Something regarding our resumption of Jonglei Canal. That thing is, we host the show here once, but now I have some panels is coming up to discuss this issue. If you just put down some notes, is this reality or is it a fake news being created by the politicians? Then you go to your final remarks and we'll close the show from there. resumption of Jonglei Canal is something that going parallel now in social media, being discussed in different platforms. And is is the movement SPLM 1983. Dr. John Garang talked about this, and is one of the main objectives of the war waging to the Sudanese government. And why now being resumed? Did they have a scientist or who can analyze and make some research? What is the effect? Is it true or not? Wow, you fall off. Oh my goodness. The network in Juba is really very bad, guys. Bear with us, and we will bring him back again. Yeah,
So
here he comes.
So
Yep,
should I
go
do my
ahead.
concluding remark?
Yep.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much. I would like to wish that let's keep on embracing each other. Let's keep speaking to each other. Let's keep talking. Through speaking to each other, we can build consensus. But the question of Jonglei Canal is a bitter issue in the country, and we are so much disturbed that are we going to be another Ethiopia controlled by Egypt? Because this of Jonglei Canal is honestly disturbing us so much, and something that likely we are organizing a national dialogue over it through the ministry, but it's something that the massive population are not happy with it, that the resumption of Jonglei Canal, and specifically when you start seeing Egyptians giving a solar system to back up the public power, put a solar system, and the power is that let the happening in Jonglei should not be used as an excuse to destroy our environment, to destroy our marine life, and to make, and of course, by the way, the Jonglei Canal until brought, there's one Sudanese Canadian who made a presentation I can share with you in the WhatsApp about the impact of Jonglei Canal and Bahr Ghazal Basin, why Egyptians are running to Bahr Ghazal Basin, because, it's something that my fear is that if you want to collect South Sudanese to come together and again wage massacres, and you want to bring 1983, it's really bring the Jonglei Canal. It's disturbing news, honestly. I have to say, in the streets, it's something disturbing, but you can continue with it. And our idea is that it's something have huge impact for several. If I read several research, and even including some of them, including one of our brother, who I know he have a problem with the system, he's in diaspora, Peter Biar, have wrote also about it. And when you compare several writing ups, we have a disaster behind that. But why is it now? And why is it in line when Egypt and Sudan are having a dispute over Blue Nile? Why Jonglei Canal now? When there's no tension in Blue Nile, why do you forget about it? When there's tension in Blue Nile and people are losing, and now Jonglei Canal become an option. What does it mean to our economy? What does it mean to our
livelihood? Yeah. All right. Yeah, thank you so much. The network has really disturbing us, and we will be having a show coming up shortly. We will advise all of you, the viewers, when it will take place. Thank you for being with us, and we thank Edmund Yakani for the briefing that he has given the public here in Lagos State Media Show. We will end up the show here, and make sure, and you remember, we are all in the same boat. If you finger pointing each other, we are all in one boat, as legend Emmanuel Kembe put it in the song.
It's your boy Young Love, I give him that time. Panchole stand and Panchir America, Panji Dwal, Banaban, Panchole stand and Panchir America, Panji Dwal, Banaban, walk on the lake, Kankara, what on a watching, Oga, level leg, gear, bow, very leg, Panda with Yay, Panchir America, Panya Dwalabano, Chingatonga Pandon, could you ever buy a check out, Papu Panda Jiro, what they be Dwalaventing. Stand and Panchir America, Panji Dwal, Banaban, Panchale stand and Panchir America, Panji Dwal, Banaban, walk on the lake, Kankara, what on a watching, Oga, level leg, gear, bow, very leg, Panda with Yay, Panchir America, Panya Dwalabano, Chingatonga Pandon, could you ever buy a check out, Papu Panda Jiro, what they be Dwalaventing.